What's up? This is a little late night ramble that I'm about to spit to you guys. I was just about to head to sleep, but then I got the sudden idea of oh, I should make a video on this. And that's, if you can read the title, that's why I stopped smoking weed, my journey through it. And if this video is more if you're someone who's watching, maybe you googled quitting weed and you're someone who's on the fence of quitting and you might want a little push or motivation to quit. I'm gonna talk about my story on why and my reasons on why I quit. If you're someone who likes smoking weed and feels good about it, feel free. I'm not judging you. You can do however you wish. Maybe you just want another perspective on someone who did quit and why they did it. Does it look better with this light on or not? My plant light? I don't know if that looks better. I kind of like this or that. I might do this light actually. Look, I started smoking weed very early. I started smoking when I was 16, 17. I must have, my first time smoking weed I was probably 16. But around the age of 17, I was definitely smoking pretty regularly. Not every day, but definitely a couple times a night, couple times a week in the evening, sometimes almost every day, or every other day, something like that. And then in my college years, I was definitely smoking every evening up to, smoking a lot of weed. When I think of the amount of damage I probably did to my brain, growing up smoking weed, the video that I watched, this video on this by Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist and he talks about the weed's effect on the brain. And so it got me thinking, you can kind of skim it. It's a really long video, but I really recommend if you're someone who's on the fence of quitting, because he talks about just different effects it has on your brain, especially a developing brain. And so for me, why I stopped smoking weed, I made a commitment to stop at least until when I'm 25, which is 3 years, right? I'm gonna stop smoking weed. And maybe after I turn 25, maybe it'll be here and there, but I don't even, or maybe I'll just stop completely. But I just needed that period because my brain's still developing, right? I'm 22 and I want to at least minimize the damage that smoking weed has done. And there's still a lot of evidence out there, and I'm not here to convince you of if it's bad or good for you. This is purely just from the research I did, and that video I highly recommend you watch, because Andrew Huberman is someone who's I find to be a very unbiased person. So if he's talking about the effects that he saw through his research, I would I'm gonna believe his credibility over a lot of other people, right? So yeah, I started smoking weed very early, from a very young age and pretty frequently, right? And the reason I always smoked was it just felt good. One big thing it did was it got rid of boredom. And right now we're living in an age that I believe it's really hard to be bored. You have your phone, right? You have something that can immediately, if you're bored, you can just kind of quench that. You can just scroll through all types of social medias and just get entertainment, right? So it's this, and when you smoke weed, it also, again, it's hard to be bored and high at the same time. You can get lost in almost any activity you're doing, at least that I find. I could be doing something boring, but if I'm high, at least I can kind of get lost in it and think creatively about it and stuff like that. And so we live in an age where it's really hard to be bored, and I think that there's a lot of dangers that come with that. But this is not a video on that. It's a video on why I started smoking weed in the first place, and I find that it helped me get through boredom and also through emotions. If I was going through something that maybe I wasn't feeling the best, I could ball up and I could that feeling would be numbed out, and I would kind of get inspired to do something, or I'd get some other emotion. But it of course isn't a lasting thing. It's not something that fixes anything. It kind of just masks over things. So weed to me has always been something I knew I was gonna give up, but I just always found it very hard. I'm someone who I want to quit things that I know are bad for me and I know are not good for me. I quit vaping, you know, for as long as I've been vaping. Well, no, probably not that long. I wasn't even vaping for as long as I was smoking weed, but you know, vaping was one of those things I knew I had to give up because it wasn't good for me. That one was relatively easy because I had an experience with it that made me stop. But even like porn and masturbation, that was a big one to give up, because if as a guy, you know how it, you know, how much porn can have a hold on you. Like that shit is very like dopamine heavy, you know, like it floods your brain with all types of neurochemicals and stuff. It makes it really hard to not watch ever, especially if someone who watches it, you know. But that's something I had to give up, porn and masturbation. It was just not good for me. It was really unnatural to me, and I knew that it had negative effects on me. But I knew at some point the time would come where I have to give up weed, and that's something that I wasn't really looking forward to, because I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of reasons on why I smoked weed. You know, I tell myself, you know, it really made me creative. One of my favorite things to do was to just ball up, go on a walk like during sunset, listen to music, and just like think, and just ideas would come to me, and I love that. Especially just like the amount of jot notes and ideas I wrote down, you know, it definitely helped me. You know, even starting this YouTube channel, I think it stemmed from just me smoking weed and just thinking about doing this. So it's a lot of good that comes out of it. I also love that I was able to access flow states much easier on weed. Like when I'm editing a video, I can get lost into it. Or if I'm doing a hypnosis, I can just get into a state of hypnosis like that. Or if I'm doing whatever, I can just get lost in it. And I love that about it. But I ultimately knew it was something I had to give up when I started feeling the urge to do it. And it started almost, instead of using it as a tool, it was like I kind of felt the need to do it. Like anytime I saw it was an amazing sunset and I didn't really have anything planned, I immediately just wanted to ball up and listen to music and go on my walks, you know? And that's just a sign that it started having a control over me, you know what I'm saying? And for the people who say weed isn't addictive, I highly want to dispute that claim. I mean, yes, it's not like psychologically or like physically addictive like heroin or something, but if you're someone who's been smoking for a long time, you can definitely understand how it could be addictive in terms of you really want to smoke weed. It makes you feel good and you want to do it again. But long story short, I just knew I had to give it up, and I ultimately did on my birthday. I decided that was going to be the last day I smoked weed. And if you're someone who's on the fence, I highly recommend also just picking a day and just choosing it. That's when you're going to stop smoking weed, because for me, I'm someone who needs like closure. I need a specific date or thing to like end things, you know? Because if it's not clear, then you'll always kind of think about it, and there's no like, it hasn't been cut, you know? So I chose my birthday, my 22nd birthday, that was the last day I would ever smoke weed. Before I had tea breaks, which is like just not going on long periods without smoking weed, and it was kind of hard. But I think once I made that decision on my birthday to stop smoking weed, which has been like over almost a month now, that decision, like I haven't really gotten the urges to smoke weed. It hasn't come on that strong. I think because I made that decision, and once I make that decision, it's pretty easy to stick to it. But that's just me. In general, I think it's good to just choose something and stick with it. That's number one. Make a commitment to just quit. If you're deciding to quit, make a commitment and just quit. You should have the reasons though in the back of your head. And if you need reasons, I'm about to give you my reasons for quitting. So I had a few reasons on why I wanted to stop smoking weed, and one of them was just that I didn't want to be held down by a substance. I felt like weed was holding me back. I think it's kind of easier to see from the outside perspective. Like imagine someone who's sober, who's thriving. He doesn't need weed or alcohol or anything really. Like they're thriving in their own state. And when I think of look at a lot of people I look up to, a lot of mentors, many of them don't or stop smoking weed. And I mean, there's definitely some that smoke weed and you can still look up to, and I still look up to, but vast majority of them, they kind of got rid of these things that were holding them back. And what I realized was a lot of successful people, they don't have things that you don't have. It's that they stopped doing things that you still do. You know, they've cut off the things and they've sacrificed more than you have, things that were holding them back from going up. So things like drugs and alcohol, or negative people, or things that were wasting their time. Successful people don't have some superpower. They just stopped those things, and a lot of people still engage in those things. You know what I'm saying? So I just knew as a matter of my evolution, I would have to give up smoking weed. So that was number one, just that was holding me back, and recognizing how it was holding me back by having the impulse to do it, and just like feeling a little slower and sluggish the next day. If I smoked at night, waking up not feeling as refreshed. You know, it's just small things like that. Like, recognize those things, right? I like having, when you're sober, it's like a steady state instead of these ups and downs. Because literally you're getting high. What's a high? There's always a low after a high. There's a crash. There's no high and just constant highness, right? There's always a low. That's like the law of duality. Or they talk about that in the Kabbalion or something like that. But yeah, so that was my thing. I had to stop smoking weed because it was just holding me back. Another thing was just, I recognized that my favorite excuse was that it was making me creative. But if I really examine that belief, is it possible to be more creative without weed, just in a sober state? I believe so. I think that if you're someone who needs weed to be creative, you're actually just, that makes you not a creative person. A creative person can be creative without any use of substances, you know what I'm saying? They can be creative in their own. Back in the day, you know, weed used to be the counterculture, but I feel like now not smoking weed is almost the counterculture. Especially like, I hang around a lot of artists, and a lot of artists smoke weed. Like almost every artist, you know, like musical or fashion or art or whatever, like they smoke weed. Like, and it's almost like the counterculture if you don't. Another reason I stopped smoking weed was just like this spiritual reason. There's definitely a reason for why weed exists. Like, it's a natural thing, it's a plant. I like to believe like God gave us weed because it can help, you know, people with pain, and for example, like two tribes that were at war with each other, they could like kind of like make truce and like smoke a pipe together, and like that's like, you know, that's like a good thing, I guess, you know. But especially the way that we use weed nowadays, and how the weed culture is, and how I was using it, I definitely don't think that's how it's intended, and I feel like there's a lot of consequences with it. Just the constant dimming down of our light. I feel like getting high is just a dimming of our light, and I feel like a lot of things that are promoted in the mainstream is generally not good for us. You look at a lot of the foods that are promoted, a lot of the media, a lot of the figures that pop in mainstream media, they're not good role models, you know. They're not good food that's popular. And so things like smoking weed, I feel like is another thing that's implanted to kind of dim our lights. I truly believe that. And I believe that in some ways smoking weed is almost like you're giving up. It sounds kind of serious, sounds kind of like big, but like it's kind of small. It's really small. Like, it's like, instead of going through the pain of boredom, instead of fighting through struggles and you know, attacking obstacles head on, it's like, I'm just gonna decide to smoke weed. It's like kind of giving up in a small way. It's like, instead of just going through boredom and sitting in silence, it's like you gotta whip out your phone. That's like almost like giving up. And so same way as like smoking weed, making these small concessions with yourself, it's like you're giving up in a way. And to me, I couldn't, if I looked at the long-term trajectory of my life, and if I kept smoking weed, it was not as, it's not where I would want it to be compared to if I didn't smoke weed, right? And I would rather just live like a short life, like when I'm 30, but I was able to embody and become my potential, versus live until I'm 70 and live like a mediocre life and had all these things weighing me down, you know, drugs and alcohol and all these other things. And so that was one motivating factor for me. And so yeah, those were my reasons basically for smoking weed. They're not kind of structured. This is a kind of free flow for my consciousness, and it is kind of late, so I'm kind of tired. But hopefully you kind of got a gist of the reasons I have. And if you're someone who is on the fence, there you go. Maybe that's a little extra motivation. But if you really are on the fence, I would recommend watching that video. I'll probably link it in my description, in the bio, of just Andrew Huberman, effects of cannabis on the brain. Because it was like, if you watch that, you'll really not want to smoke weed, especially if you're young. But yeah, something I haven't really told my friends either. I don't know why, I just haven't really, like, sometimes they ask me for a ball up, and I'm doing like a little dopamine detox right now, so I just tell them I'm doing that because I am. But I've actually quit on my birthday. I didn't really tell anyone, except for my girlfriend, who she also quit too. Not because I told her to, but she was also kind of like wanting to quit, and she just decided to quit too because I quit as well. But you know, I haven't smoked basically since my birthday. I haven't told my friends because I don't want them to think that I'm judging them, even though I don't think that they'll take it that way. It's just like, I just want to be low-key about it. I hope, like, if they ask, I'll just tell them I stopped smoking weed, but they're inevitably gonna ask why I stopped, and I don't want to go on a long tirade on my philosophy on why I stopped. But I'll just let them know, like, you know, I just stopped smoking weed. But anyways, I'm rambling at this point, so I'm just gonna end the video. But thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.